Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. We are heading right straight down to the University of Virginia. We've got Jennifer Lawless. She's the chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Virginia. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello.
It is a busy, crazy time in this presidential race. Vice presidential nominee for the Democrats, Governor Walz, is scheduled to come into Rhode Island for a fundraiser down in Newport this afternoon, early this afternoon. I'm told he'll be in Rhode Island for about a total of about 50 minutes in and out, as they say. Give us a little recap of what the last week has looked like in this presidential battle, and then we'll go into the convention.
The last week has basically been an introduction of Tim Walz to the American people. From the minute that Kamala Harris named him her running mate, they've been barnstorming the country. They did a 5-state battleground tour where they had large rallies, upwards of 10,000 people at all of them, basically to introduce Tim Walz to the American people. And we've also seen the two of them in individual events try to shake as many hands, woo as many voters, and get as much publicity on their terms as they can. So this is definitely the honeymoon period of the Democratic campaign. And heading into the convention, they want to have as much momentum on their side as they possibly can in an attempt to continue to grow it over the course of the next week.
And, you know, from a standpoint, it seems like there's been a lot of forward momentum with Walz, but there's been a few chinks here and there, right? A lot of debate about his military service and maybe some false statements he made during a campaign event when he was running for governor. Some other questions emerging, but it's a heck of a lot better than J.D. Vance's rollout has been.
Yeah, there's no question. And also, I would say the two things about the Tim Walz scandals that have been emerging are, first, one of them regarding the DUI is based on a misstatement from 18 years ago about an event from 29 years ago. If that's the best that the Republicans can come up with, I think the Harris-Walz campaign is pretty happy. And regarding his military service, he's taken it head on. And I expect that in the debate with J.D. Vance, which has now been set for October 1st on CBS, this is something that they'll talk about, and it'll be up to the American people to decide. But it's very difficult to paint him as anybody other than, you know, a military vet. So I'm not sure that this kind of swift voting is going to have the same appeal for voters as it did for John Kerry's campaign in 2004.
Right. So let's jump over to the front line, the presidential candidates. Donald Trump has had, I think, all Republicans would say, a brutal week, and much of it self-inflicted, as Harris has been able to begin to create some momentum from a forward-looking public policy standpoint, introducing some ideas on the economy. Trump has just been obsessed with attacking Harris. And it would seem like if I were Donald Trump, I would want to stick on these issues of the economy and immigration. These are things I can score points with undecided middle American voters, suburban voters who are concerned about the economy. And yet all he seems to be able to do is revert back to personal attacks.
Trump lacks the discipline to do what his campaign is telling him to do, which is exactly what you just said. Stick to the issues. When it comes to the economy and immigration, he can make compelling points. J.D. Vance on the campaign trail is doing that. Other surrogates on the campaign trail are doing that. But Donald Trump cannot get out of his own head. He's obsessed with Kamala Harris. He's obsessed with her race. He's obsessed with whether she lied about it. He's obsessed with crowd size again. And these are all things that I think remind people of what it was like when he ran in 2016, when he ran in 2020, when he governed. And those are not the strengths that the American people think of when they think about Donald Trump. And so every day that he's talking about whether there were more people at his rally or hers is a day that Harris wins the news cycle.
Doesn't this really help Harris and her family's economic condition? Because they are living rent-free in Donald Trump's head.
That was good.
I'm sure you'll use it later. Let's go to next week in the Democratic convention. There's been this reemergence of Joe Biden. Harris is having an event with him. He's going to kick off, I think, on Monday night. This is a bad idea. There seems to be, this does not seem to be, there's no nostalgia of Joe Biden yet. Wait 5 years, there will be nostalgia on Joe Biden. What are they thinking? Rolling out sort of this, we just got over him, why bring him out and drag him around?
A few things. The first is the Trump campaign
Guilt?
and Donald
Is it
Trump.
just guilt?
No, 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 no. I think that the Harris campaign is pretty guilt-free. I think the Democratic Party is pretty guilt-free. Nancy Pelosi might feel a little guilty. I think one of the things is that Donald Trump and the Trump campaign are trying to suggest that the nomination was stripped from Joe Biden, that he is not on speaking terms with Kamala Harris, that the Democratic Party is fractured, and that he wants nothing to do with this, and that he might even come to the convention and try to grab the nomination back. Demonstrating unity between the two of them just deflates that balloon. So that's part of it. The second thing is that Harris wants to run on some of the successes of the Biden administration, and she wants to claim credit for them. And so it's less about Biden nostalgia than reminding people of the Biden record that Joe Biden was not able to communicate adequately during his campaign, but Kamala Harris is going to try to do during the convention and for the next 83 days.
Yeah, I just see him shuffling out there. It's just a little bit of a momentum killer for the Democrats.
It's not a coincidence that he's speaking on Monday night.
Monday night.
If it doesn't work out well, that was just
6
early
p.m. At 6 p.m. Right? Let's ask the big question. I mean, the single most important question for the country, for Taylor Swift, is Taylor Swift coming? Taylor Swift, Beyonce, are they going to be there at the Democratic convention?
We don't know, but we do know that it's going to be a star-studded affair. I think the Republicans generally like those visuals because they want to paint the Democrats as coastal elites and in Hollywood's pocket. But the reality is that Americans like celebrities, and a lot of these are very, very popular people. So, I don't know, but my bet is that we're going to see a lot more impressive characters than Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan.
Thus reinforcing that the Democratic Party is coastal elites owned by Hollywood. But we'll skip over that. Will Barbara Streisand be there? Because she's always good for that. George Clooney, Julia Roberts, the whole bunch.
The smartless guys.
The smartless guys. What will we see, and what the Republicans did for most of their convention week was talk to sort of that undecided voters. They had a really well-scripted convention until the second half of Trump's speech, where he went off the talking points. How do the Democrats, it's great if George Clooney's there, but I think he lives in Lake Como in Italy. That's not necessarily a key voting bloc. How do the Democrats touch base with suburban Philadelphia voters who are going to be the key middle of Wisconsin voters, Michigan voters that are going to attract them over?
I think it's a similar strategy, just with different people. We just learned, for example, that Pete Buttigieg has a primetime speaking engagement. I think that the people who are going to be featured in these primetime slots are the younger next generation of the Democratic Party, many of whom are from middle America, and many of whom have backgrounds that suggest that they do resonate with the average middle class voter out there. In addition, we're going to see the same kinds of appearances by people who have been positively affected by the Biden-Harris administration and who support what Kamala Harris wants to do moving forward. There's no question that reproductive rights will be heavily featured, and there's no question that whether it be in person or through video, there will be women who have been denied reproductive choice, and the painstaking details that they'll then recount regarding their own personal experiences. So I expect that the script will be pretty similar, at least in terms of the way that the campaign is trying to get to undecideds.
You mentioned that they're going to profile some folks who've been benefited from the Democratic policies. Will Hunter Biden be speaking accordingly about his efforts in Italy to get contracts for a Ukrainian energy company?
Do you think that I'm going to dignify that with a response?
I think the lack of response may say it all. But one big thing has happened in the past week or so that maybe hasn't gotten the attention, but really could be critical to deciding this election. the issue of abortion is going to come before the voters in a number of key swing states. Isn't this a absolute blow to Republicans, because it's going to bring out, if earlier indications hold true, Missouri and otherwise, isn't this going to bring out an incredible amount of folks who may not have voted to come out and vote just on this single issue, and they will break Democratic?
Yes. Now, the benefit is going to be less than it would ordinarily be in a congressional or off-year election cycle, simply because turnout is already higher in presidential elections. But sure, the people who are motivated by this issue disproportionately favor the Democrats. This is also why Democratic Senate and House candidates are now breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief, because with Harris at the top of the ticket and abortion in states like Florida and Arizona on the ballot, tough congressional districts just got a little bit easier for Democratic candidates.
Okay, so let's talk about, there's sort of 7 swing states, 6, 7. Is it bigger than that? Is Florida now in play?
Yes, it's interesting. About a month ago, we were talking about how it was possible that even New York was in play when Trump
For
was
the
running
Republicans,
against Biden.
yeah.
Yeah, so you've got the regular swing states sort of back in the total swing state category. And then it seems like the Democrats are going to give it a shot in Florida and North Carolina. So what that means is that there are just more paths for the Democrats to reach 270. But more importantly, even if they can't win in Florida and North Carolina, they're going to be requiring the Republicans to divert some of their resources from swing states into those states to defend themselves. And that's not a position that any campaign wants to be in. All of this said, 6 weeks ago, we never would have expected that we'd be here. So I'm not ready to, declare this race over yet, or even say that the momentum is going to remain with Harris for the next 6 weeks.
Well, that was really my next question. She couldn't have had a better 30 days. It seems like 6 years ago, Joe Biden stepped aside, but it's only been about 30 days. It literally couldn't have gone any better on the issues, on the momentum. Is it possible for 80-something more days for her to continue this? And how will we see her take some lumps, and the key to this race being her battling back when she takes some lumps?
Maybe. We know that this week is generally good, and she's going to lay out some economic policies today, which will be positive and forward-looking. We know that next week is generally going to be very good coverage for her because of the convention. So then we're talking about, 68 or 69 days. Can she get through those? The debate is a point where there could be some sort of shock to the system. Unlikely, but we've seen it happen before. The first time she does a long-form interview with a journalist could potentially be a problem for her. Perhaps not, but that's an opportunity for a mistake to be made. And then there are also things along the campaign where we don't know necessarily how she's going to respond to an ad that the Trump campaign releases or a statement that Trump makes. Right now, she's been very, very disciplined. She doesn't really engage him. And she's just moving along with her own message. That requires a lot of discipline for another 3 months.
Could Donald Trump miraculously get discipline, stick to messages related to economy, immigration, and really, really get a forward push?
He personally can't. The question is whether his campaign can keep him in a dark room for enough days where the rest of them can try to get on board. He cannot help himself. And she gets under his skin in a way that even Hillary Clinton did not. At his press conference last week, he sort of longingly referred to Hillary Clinton as, a very intelligent woman and somebody who really gave him a run for his money. That's crazy compared to the things that he had said about her in 2016 and frankly up until 2 weeks ago. For whatever reason, and we can all speculate as to what they are, Kamala Harris is somebody that he thinks is not at all entitled to this position. And it drives him nuts that he's actually got to debate her and run against her.
Yeah, it seems like all Harris needs to do is tweet something an hour before Trump is scheduled to go on stage at one of his big rallies. Just something innocuous about America, and that will set him off for the entire evening and change the opportunity for messaging into sort of this chaotic fight syndrome. What does Harris need to be careful of, though?
So I would say, especially during a debate and a one-on-one interaction with him, she needs to, unfortunately, make sure that nobody perceives her as the angry Black woman. And, those are stereotypes that some Americans are still going to invoke and that they look for. And so if he says something that's completely inaccurate, or if he makes an allegation that's utterly offensive, it would behoove her to just basically look at him and say, are you okay? Do you know what you're talking about? As opposed to get angry or defensive moving forward. So, I mean, I think she still has to guard against that a little bit. By the same token, people don't like it when male candidates bully female candidates, and he's as big a bully as you can possibly get. So I think even if things don't go particularly well in terms of interpersonal dynamics at the debate, she still has a pretty substantial edge.
And is there some little intricacies to their debate? And I don't want to get into debate until we get to debate time. But will she refer to him as Donald, or will she refer to him as Mr. Trump or former president, or how does she handle those things?
I don't think it really matters. We know he's now starting to call her Kamala, which means that at some point the campaign decided that mispronouncing her name was not helping them. I think she'll be sufficiently respectful. She'll probably refer to him as the former president. But I do think the way that the Democrats talk about him next week at the convention is going to also be telling. And whether they use bulldogs like Pete Buttigieg to really, really take him down, or whether she and Tim Walz do it too, and whether the tone in how they try to refute what he said and question his integrity varies based on sort of stature within the party. So that'll be a dynamic to look for.
And last thing, is there a little bit of a danger? I know it's hard to believe based on where this race was 30 days ago, but you saw coming out of the weekend, the New York Times Siena polls showing a reversal of leadership, still within the margin of errors in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Harris leading Trump anywhere from, I think, 2 to 4 points. Is there the danger, hard to believe you could even utter this, that the Democrats get too confident and lose an edge here or there?
Well, that's been her message, that the Democrats do not have the luxury to be complacent. They should not believe the polls. They should not believe the momentum, and they should not assume that it's going to last. And it's a lot easier for Kamala Harris to encourage Democrats who have been pretty depressed for the last 18 months to stay enthusiastic for 85 more days than it is for the Republicans to do so. And in fact, if you look at the enthusiasm numbers, about 81% of Democrats now say that they're enthusiastic about the ticket, compared to 46% a month ago. The Republican numbers have stayed pretty flat at roughly 71%. So, those are numbers that the Democrats should be happy about, and it's a lot easier to keep those numbers high for 3 months than for a year and a half.
Jennifer Lawless, Chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Virginia. We always thank you for joining us. Everybody stay tuned. A terrible story, GoLocal, just broke about an 81-year-old woman restaurant owner up on Smith Street assaulted by a robber. A terrible, terrible story. And we'll have updates throughout the day. Stay tuned for much, much more, and enjoy this great weather. Thanks, everybody.